your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I am Richard Dugan, and we are here with the founder of the Beautiful Journey. We're going to find out what the Beautiful Journey VR project is all about with our guest. And actually, I would say a longtime friend and someone that I've spoken with recently, Peter Brill. It's wonderful to have you back here on the program to talk about this extraordinary opportunity for people to, as we were told as kids, being told to go to the library, broaden our horizons. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Well, keeping busy to say the very least, just enjoying this particular journey, which can be also very beautiful, living here on the South Coast in Santa Barbara, California. But you're talking about a whole different kind of journey, beautiful journey, shall we say. And let's start from the beginning. First of all, what is the Brill Family Foundation?
Well, it's Karen and Peter Brill. That's my wife and I. We've been giving out grants to various sectors of Santa Barbara over 20 years, and we've had various different phases. We've gone through different interests. Our current interest is in technology and art, and how they can change human consciousness and do good and help change society.
Well, that is a wonderful goal, let me tell you, because this program not only brings new paradigms for a new world, but also is helping to give choices and knowledge of those choices to help make people's dreams come true. And we are looking for those new ways of living because you look around you, the old ways just don't work. I mean, it's self-evident, we don't have to look too far. So we are looking for those new ways of thinking, for that matter. Matter of fact, Peter, I'm wondering if maybe it's less about the old ways not working as much as it is taking a look at what it is that we want and thinking differently, having a different perspective.
Absolutely. It's not only that, though. What's happened is the change rate is just accelerated, and it's going up what we call exponentially. That is, it's going up not as a straight line where the change each year is the same as the change before. Every year is faster and faster. And I think we as human beings are having more and more trouble adapting. And then in addition to that, the way we've used social media and so forth is really crippling many of the young. They're really wonderful studies. The studies aren't wonderfully done, not the conclusions. But many of the young people now are just flooded with anxiety and depression, and all because it looks like from social media.
It's funny that you say that because there are probably just as many who say, oh, no, no, no. The problem isn't social media. It was COVID and it was being locked down. And it was because they didn't have an opportunity to socialize. And I'm sitting here thinking, and you people are probably the same ones that complain about the educational system and how bad it is. So why would you want to send them back there? That to me is more detrimental. That's more detrimental than being isolated.
Yeah, it's a real dilemma.
Yeah,
But
it is.
yeah, no, but our educational system is having many, many problems.
Sure.
And, so
There's always room for improvement, and
cultures
that's what we're
yeah,
kind of talking about here on the program is
yeah.
finding those areas of improvement. Talk to us about this wonderful, beautiful, what's referred to as the Beautiful Journey VR project. First of all, what is it?
Okay, well, it came about as a result of two things that I was thinking about. One is I was very interested in the studies on psilocybin. That's the mushrooms that they started giving to end-stage cancer patients. And 80% of them overcame their fear of death. Now, as you know, I'm a psychiatrist. I was at the University of Pennsylvania on the faculty and many other things. But death, the fear of death, is undergirding an awful lot of anxiety that people have about life and a lot of their choices. So if there was a drug out there that could help people overcome or diminish their fear of death, I was very interested in it. And then they started giving it to just people, healthy people, and they had good results from it, certain percentage. So I wondered about that. Then I got very interested in VR. VR is this thing where they put a scope on you. And it turns out that, the story that got me interested was a guy named Bernard Spiegel, who's at Cedars-Sinai. And he went into a conference room and they put a VR on him and he was going up the side of a building. And what happened was after they got up to the 40th floor and they said, step off. Well, he knew he was standing in a conference room with the scope on him, but he literally couldn't move. He couldn't step off this platform that was out at the edge of a building. And I said, anything that's that powerful that it can affect your brain that much. And of course, the brain is shaped by experience, and these are powerful experiences. Could we do with VR what had been formerly done with drugs? And that's what got us very interested in creating the Beautiful Journey.
It reminds me of an episode. It's funny how people will say, oh my God, Richard, you're dating yourself. And your point is, it's memories. One of the episodes of Star Trek Next Generation, where Data has had this fascination with Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And his nemesis, of course, Sherlock's nemesis was Moriarty. And throughout this particular episode, he's in there and somehow, some way, Moriarty attains a certain level of self-awareness. He's not a hologram anymore. He actually exists. He actually was able to step out of the holodeck onto the ship deck, if you will. And you're not supposed to be able to do that if you're a hologram.
Yeah.
And anyway, the program carries on. Anyway, the final scene of that episode, which has always fascinated me, which ties into what you're talking about. Data is holding this fairly good-sized cube, which is basically containing Google bytes of data or space to where Moriarty will be able to travel throughout the universe inside the box without ever knowing that he is not out in the quote-unquote real world. But the part of that scene that struck me mostly was when Data, holding the box, looks up just a little bit and says, computer, end program.
Yeah.
And and people have thought of this for many years. I mean, the movie The Matrix is another example too. We don't know what's real, or We think we know what's real. I mean, this tabletop that my laptop is sitting on, my laptop that I am looking at you through, and so on and so forth. Oh, those are all real. Those are solid. But science has said, no, it's only our perception because everything is energy. And this particular energy has formed into a laptop and a countertop and you and me. So and I will, how similar is this VR technology to our dreams, those that we remember? I have to be honest with you. I very rarely remember my dreams, if ever.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the difference from your perspective between our dreaming state and this whole VR thing, especially if the example that you just gave, this individual knew intellectually they were in a conference room with this device on their face, but they could not follow through with what they wanted to because they didn't want to die walking off the edge of a building or what have you.
Yeah, it's a really good question. When we measure the brain, they're not the same. I think what's really happening, it does feel like a dream state sometimes in the VR, and we'll talk about that for Beautiful Journey in a second. Mm-hmm. But I think what's happening with the VR is it's such powerful sensory, 360-degree sensory and sound and visual input that if you think like a computer, you have a core processor in a computer and can only do so much. And I think you're overloading the core processor of the brain. It can only process so much information, and it just floods that processor. And so it becomes your reality functionally.
Mm. And then I'm going to throw another element into the mix. Consciousness.
Yeah.
Big subject today.
Oh boy.
Tie that in, if you will. I mean, I know this may take the entire program, but what about that aspect of it? Because I have experienced what's called LBL, or Life Between Lives hypnosis therapy with local practitioners. Fascinating. I've also read the multiple books by Dr. Newton and his case studies, all of them independent of one another. So whatever there are similarities, obviously people are having similar experiences. But at the same time, was it Jung who said that there is only one mind in the universe?
Yeah. You're well beyond my pay grade. I do know certain things, though, that we can talk about. Mm-hmm. We're much more interconnected. And Jung talks about the collective unconscious. Well, we can certainly document pieces of it. For example, if you put a bunch of ladies in a dorm, pretty soon they'll all be menstruating together.
Right.
And they'll be menstruating off the most dominant female. Or if you put a bunch of men after their first heart attack just in a group and let them talk once a week, they'll have half the half the number of heart attacks that a control group will have. So something goes on between us, and it's chemical. The thing that allows the women to menstruate together is a thing called pheromones. So we're basically tied together by olfactory things and probably a lot of other ways that we just don't fully understand. So whether it's all one mind or not, that's way beyond my ability to give you a valid answer.
We're talking with Peter Brill. He is the founder of the Brill Foundation, the Brill Family Foundation. You can find out more about Peter. Of course, go to peterbrill.net. We're going to be linked, though, to the Beautiful Journey VR project. Interesting slip. And it is beautifuljourneyvr.com, beautifuljourneyvr.com, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan here with Peter Brill, and we're talking about the Beautiful Journey VR project, and we've started to dive into it in that respect. Let's go a little further into this. You talked to us earlier about how this came about. What is the goal? If someone comes to you and says, I found it so intriguing on this program that you are on, whether it's this or any place else, I want to experience that which you talked about. So, first of all, what was it that you were talking about on some of these other programs or in lectures and what have you? And what is it that I would be coming to you for to experience this beautiful journey VR project?
Well, then they wouldn't be coming to me. It's at the Century and Movement Museum out of the Cumbra, and you can just walk in there, or you can call them up, or go online and schedule a time to go do it. They have a couple of rooms dedicated. People can come in. They have the scopes there, and you can actually experience it. As far as the goals were concerned, it's I have the results of probably 80 people's first, what they say it does for them. And what it says is it produces less anxiety in general and less anxiety about death, increases their value of the present. It makes them feel more about having and giving love, opens their heart, helps them find something feel meaningful, and helps them feel more connected to life. That's what people tell us it does.
Mm.
This is not a mental health treatment, by the way. This
Okay.
is not. This is just for everyday people, who want to go from normal to super normal or want to improve their consciousness. We're not representing this as a psychiatric treatment at all.
I want to go back to and we'll get back more into this program. But you're saying that it is here in locally here in Santa Barbara, California, in the La Cumbre Plaza,
Uh-huh.
which is what that's referred to there. It's off of La Cumbre and State Street here in Santa Barbara. And again, you can go to beautifuljourneyvr.com. I'm sure to get information. You talked earlier about a subject that we specifically in this country have more trouble talking about than any other, and that's death and dying.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have had in the last, 5, maybe 6 years, though I did have some experiences with people passing, even when I was in my 20s and 30s, when I was with another station in Phoenix. But in the last 3 to 5 years, I've lost a dear friend who lived across the street from my wife and I, my present wife and I. I lost my best friend of 53 years.
Oh my God.
Lost my father.
Oh my
Lost
God.
my eldest sister.
Mm.
I lost a dear friend who is a member of the Chumash Indian tribe. He was an elder, but a great friend and mentor. And I could list a few more, but suffice it to say, this. And as I've gotten older, I'll be 65 in June. This isn't going to end. My mother is still alive, but she'll be 91 this year. How much longer she lives, I don't know. I hope a while longer, but that's up to her, not up to me. I know we don't want to lose people, but it's like, well, wait a minute, I got a new job and I got to move across the country to work there. I don't know what my departure tickets. I don't know what my departure date is on my travel ticket for this body. I don't. I only know what the arrival was, when I got here. But we have a real hard time with this, and I will say that with my best friend, I have not shed a tear because every time I think about him and the things that we did, I laugh because we had so much fun together as we were growing up. I've had a period with my father, a sobbing kind of a situation where I wish that I could call him and talk with him. But I talk with him now all the time without even having to call, what is it? Obviously it's an issue you've studied or at least thought about and pursued. But what is there a particular something about this subject that strikes fear in that I would rather be in and yet these things that people are afraid of, I'd rather be in the coffin than in front giving the eulogy. That's a weird thing too, but that's another area. What's your perspective on that? What's the biggest concern that people have over the subject in general?
Well, can I just back up just a little bit?
Absolutely.
I studied development. I'm very interested in the lifespan development. And somewhere around 40 or 50, our time frame shifts. We start living life from birth to time left to live. And depending upon your model of what death is, whether you think you live afterwards or whether you think that's the end of it, either way, death is a significant event in that journey, and it becomes so everything becomes relevant to death, all the experiences you're having. So, and if you believe that death is the end of everything, how do you find meaning in life? Mm-hmm. And that's a real huge challenge. How do you find passion? What do you attach to? What do you value? And then, as you point out, of course, as you age, you start having all these losses. And how do you cope with, for example, I have someone I know who lost a friend when he was about 40, and he's now in his 60s, late 60s. And he can't make another deep friendship because it was too painful. He just froze off that ability. And he's lonely, but he can't let himself attach in the same way. So those are two examples. Then for people who believe in life after death, what does that mean to them? Is it a religious thing? Could they be punished after death, or are they going to float out in existence? Going to come back? Depends. Some models have you come back as a worm, and that doesn't sound too good to me.
No.
So there's a natural sense that something astounding is, no matter what your belief is in front of you, and that colors a lot of life.
Yeah. Interesting. I just watched a portion of a documentary because I couldn't continue watching it anymore because, number one, I was so frustrated with those who were speaking. They were talking about the philosophical perspective on death and dying and what happens after. And they were using a form of study that I'm familiar with, not that I am one, but on eschatology. And they were talking about how, well, the words that we have today they were either mistranslated or they weren't translated absolutely correctly. And actually the meaning of the word is this. And I sat there going, wait a minute, hold on a second. You mean for the past 2,000 years or so, everybody that's come before you who has studied and written and rewritten these ancient, I call them ancient wisdom teachings, are wrong. Case in point, one of the commandments, thou shalt not kill. And now they're saying, oh, that's the wrong word. It should be thou shalt not murder, which has a different connotation than just in general kill. And I'm going, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. You're telling me that's what you think it should be. Oh, no, I go over here. No. That's what you believe it should be. And now they're saying, in terms of death, that from this philosophy, when you die, the body dies, goes into the ground or is cremated, what have you, turns ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But the soul, that essence that animates the body, it goes to sleep until the day of judgment. And I'm thinking, hold on a second. So they have watches on the other side? They have a clock on the other side? No, they don't. And the reason I bring this up is because in those ancient wisdom teachings in the New Testament, Peter says, it is appointed every man once to die, and then the judgment. So there is no time frame. It's death, judgment. That's the philosophical perspective. But it became frustrating to continue watching this, not just from that standpoint, but from what they were saying about what happens. And it's like, that's contrary to everything that every other programmer on the Christian station that I worked for back in the 80s and early 90s ever spoke about. And that's always been my bugaboo is when I ask questions and the answers come back and it's like, but that doesn't make any sense. That's illogical. Now, going to your point about life having meaning, I've had someone come to me and say, I'm scared of death. I said, well, because there are those who say that there's nothing after this. And I said, well, I can only tell you what I believe. I absolutely know nothing because I haven't been there and come back. Okay. At least as far as I know. And I said, number one is if there's nothing after this, we're not going to know it anyway. So it doesn't matter. But then there's the other side of it. And again, what I believe is based upon the logic that I use in my brain, it makes no sense that we go through all that we go through, even like conversations like you and I are having, processing that information and discussing the spiritual ramifications, the metaphysical ramifications, esoteric, et cetera, et cetera. Learn different lessons, and we don't hopefully make them a second or a third or a fourth time. And then there's nothing. But then the third option, based upon this one philosophy, is at death, we will then have the judgment. And if we go to heaven, we will then sit in front of the Creator for all eternity, worshiping the Creator. And I'm going, okay, I can get that for, I'll put a time frame on it, a couple of days. But after that, I'm going to be bored out of my mind. I don't want to just, I mean, no, taking nothing away. All right. No disrespect. All right. But come on. It doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of where I come from, is if it doesn't make sense in my mind, then I have to continue asking the questions. Is that kind of where you come from?
All that's logical. All that's logical. The fear of death is biological, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's biological. I mean, if you don't eat and you get hungry, you don't have to logically conclude that you're hungry. You feel hungry. Mm-hmm. We're animals, basically. Right. And so our fear of death and our mourning is part of our biological systems. And that's why it's so powerful. Yeah. It's wired into our whole biology.
Have you, well, I would venture you have experienced the beautiful journey?
Yes, only 100 times when we tried to, every detail we had to go over to try to get it right.
It sounds to me like this is the VR equivalent of what I went through in the 80s when I went to LifeSpring, which was an outgrowth of EST, a personal growth and development program. You're there 3 nights and then all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And I know that in some of these kinds of programs, what they do in the first few nights is they really try to break you down. Mm-hmm. They try to break through the walls that you have created and so forth. And then Saturday and Sunday, they then begin to lift you up. Now, some people say, oh, these are cults. So, well, I only went through the 3 levels and that was it. I didn't continue with them. Yeah. Then there was a gentleman by the name of George Adair who had a program called Omega Vector and Delta Vector in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, he was not the George Adair. He was a printer there in Phoenix. He ran a printing company. But it was fascinating because he utilized teachings from Chardin and Teilhard, mm-hmm. and talked about the 0 point, and then incorporated so many other of the philosophies around the world and down through the centuries. What about your background and your influences over the years? What were the initial elements of your philosophical upbringing in your family, and then how you have shifted or changed or moved into new realms?
Well, let me just clarify one thing first. Beautiful Journey does not break you down at all, and it's only about 20 to 22 minutes. It's a beautiful artistic musical. You're kind of in an altered state, drifting through it. We tell people if you're unhappy about anything, just take the scope off so you can, it's not like a drug. You can just stop it at any moment. No one in all the people who've done it so far has ever done that. No one who's emerged from it is sorry they took the trip. And it has nothing to do with breaking you down. It really has to do with raising you to a new level of consciousness. But in terms of my background, I was raised by a psychoanalyst who, basically didn't believe in religion or spirituality at all. I went through medical school, did residency in psychiatry at the best place in the country, then went on to study organizations and was on the faculty at the Wharton Business School, in addition to the Department of Psychiatry, and I started several national companies. But my journey through all this has been a struggle to try to understand the human heart and the human consciousness, and how to elevate us to new levels of compassion and understanding, and to recognize that most of what we see in the mental health world, most of what people go for therapy are not illnesses. There are a few, but most of them are not. Most of them are just normal development. People hit a stage in their development where they're having trouble and they need to learn something new. For example, when you have a child, no one teaches you how to be a parent. No one teaches you how to be a husband or wife. We're just expected to know these things, and we don't. And the same thing with how to deal with change in our lives and how to deal with complexities of these modern organizational worlds. And so most of this is about learning and just normal learning.
We're talking with Peter Brill, founder of not only the Brill Family Foundation, but also Beautiful Journey VR Project, the website, beautifuljourneyvr.com. And we will be linked to that website so that you can find out more about that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and we are talking about a fascinating opportunity for all of us to work on. What is it, Peter, that we're going to work on? I mean, I love what you've shared thus far, but for those who are just joining us, I'm going to go into the VR experience one way, and I'm going to come out how?
Well, I don't know. Depends. But if you go into it with an open mind and you're willing to just follow the voice that leads you through it, and we've used a lot of science to try to create an altered state for you, so you're in a very relaxed, kind of almost dreamlike, as you were talking about, state, looking at your life and experiencing various things, and it helps you put your whole life together in a new framework, and to come out maybe at a more with a little more compassion for yourself and for the world, your heart opened, and more appreciation how beautiful this journey we're on is. No matter with all the pains and sorrows and ups and downs, this is a beautiful journey.
It really is. I've often said that when it comes to looking for those new ways of living, it doesn't mean that where we are now is an awful, icky, terrible place. We need to go to Mars. Okay. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying this is a beautiful place and there's always room for improvement. I mean, think about it. If you were to, I know that my present wife and her first husband, they had a house built in Northern Phoenix, or what was Northern Phoenix back in the 80s. And even after it was built and finished and the contractors were gone and they'd been in a few years, they started making modifications. Okay. And that's okay. And we do that with our physical bodies. All right. Some people will do cosmetic surgery for psychological reasons because they don't feel good about their nose, or, I wish I had more hair, or whatever the case might be. And I used to poo-poo that, thinking, oh, come on, go to therapy, deal with it and get over it. And then I got to thinking, you know what? If that gets them over the hump to fix the nose or whatever, then by all means do it if that makes you feel more comfortable in the skin you're in. But we do the same thing educationally, intellectually. We go to school. We're sent to school initially, and then some of us choose to continue on to educate ourselves. I suppose there's a spiritual component to that as well, isn't there?
Absolutely. What we found is that as you age, this deeper level, you call it whatever you want. I'm not talking religion. I'm just talking a deeper kind of consciousness, energy, self, the real self. It's labeled different things by different people's understanding of it. But you have to get more and more in touch with that deeper level of yourself. Otherwise, all this journey doesn't make any sense to you, and you'll start suffering from it.
I would agree with you. There's a story in Autobiography of a Yogi, my metaphysical primer, and it's talking about how, and I'm trying to remember if it was Paramahansa whose guru took him to view what was referred to then as a cinescope. a movie. And they're sitting there, and Paramahansa, was not real impressed. And of course, the guru knew this. So they walk out of the theater because the guru knew that, well, there's going to be an event's going to happen, that the projector's going to shut down, and we'll be able to escape. So once they got outside, he says to Paramahansa, he says, and I realized that wasn't real impressive for you. You didn't find that interesting, but I've got a cinescope that I think you'll find fascinating. I paraphrase. And he gives him a thump on the chest. And all of a sudden, Paramahansa is able to see and experience the world in all directions.
Wow.
Not even like the Disney 360-degree camera shot that they would lower out of an airplane or mount on the top of a car and drive and fly and go and so forth. And you go into that room and you could spin around and see all different directions. That's only 2 dimensions there. But he was 3-dimensional, above, below, and so on and so forth. And he comes back and it was like, wow, and of course he's aware of the thoughts and the feelings of all of the people around him and so forth. And there's a part of me that feels a little bit like on a lower level, maybe, that this is sort of that kind of an experience. Now that you're not going to be given a higher consciousness awareness of the universe per se, but of your universe, you. Is that one of the keys that we need to look at, is that we need to learn more about the self? Because when we do that, we do become more empathetic. We do become more understanding of others, more compassionate, and so forth. When we put those elements on ourselves in terms of our understanding of who and what we are, is the beautiful journey part of that process?
Yeah, can I answer? Yes, but can I answer it in a different way?
Sure.
So you asked about my past. So I was in my 2nd year of psychiatric residency, and I was sitting there struggling and struggling and struggling because I realized what you said about perception before. I could only understand what the people were saying within my own framework, my own perception. And I kept struggling to try to get outside myself, to try to truly understand and get where they were and really understand at the deepest level what they were talking about. When I had my first spiritual experience, and I fell through I describe it as kind of falling through a floor of something into this incredible space where I had amazing clarity, an elevated mood, a just sense of joy and clarity that I had never fully experienced before. And of course, I thought I had a psychotic experience, and I was ashamed of it for 20 years being a psychiatrist. But it turns out other people have described this. So there are other levels of consciousness that we can go to. And I see that as kind of going to the real self. Our self that we built around us is not the real self. The real self is deeper. And when you get there, it alters life. Now, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's...
You did, and of course, Your Honor, Peter has opened up the door to this line of questioning, so I must follow through. Ask me. I want to ask you about psychedelics, ayahuasca in particular. I have the DVD at home of the hallucinogen that people, I want to say, participate in a safe space with facilitators and so forth. My favorite segment of that DVD was a gentleman who began to describe what he had experienced. And he says, and I was gone for days.
Yeah.
I was gone for days. He says, how long was I really gone? I said, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm wondering, I mean, here we have the Beautiful Journey VR project, when we've got this experience that we can have that will broaden our horizons, open ourselves up to self and so on and so forth, which might make us a better human, which is always a wonderful goal to want to work towards. But what about some of these other elements that are now actually being studied, and even beyond studied, being used specifically in this case to help veterans work through, and even in some cases be released from PTSD and other conditions. That if they'd only been allowed under supervision to use these tools, they could have ended the suffering they were going through a lot sooner than they did. But they're thankful that obviously they have. What are your thoughts on those? We'll call them outside elements, the hallucinogens and so forth, because you mentioned mushrooms earlier.
Yeah. Well, my problem is, of course, I retired early from psychiatry. I retired in my 50s. So I haven't necessarily kept up with all the studies in all these areas. So I think if you really want a really good answer, let's find somebody to come on your show who's, current in all the research of it. So what I say, take with a grain of salt.
Right.
So here's my thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Huge amount of it has to do with who you do it with, what kind of preparation you do, what your goals are, who you talk to afterwards, and mostly who you feel safe enough with to do it while you're with somebody. You do it with somebody when you feel safe. To do it just as a go home and drop acid or do something all by yourself, I think you're rolling the dice. But the best that I could see so far is if you go to somebody, you have 2 or 3 sessions, talk about what you're trying to get out of this. You do it under supervision. Somebody's there with you feel safe with, or in a situation where you feel safe, and then someone you can talk to afterwards and process what you've experienced. For a fairly hefty number of people, it is beneficial. But more than that, I don't know the studies, so I can't tell people to do it or not do it. And I don't know how you select the people that would be the right ones.
That's a good point. We're talking with Peter Brill. We're talking about the Beautiful Journey VR project. BeautifulJourneyVR.com is the website. We hope that you'll check that out and continue checking us out here on Tell Me Your Story. Peter Brill is my guest. Peter, I wanted to ask you about an element that we talk about quite regularly on this program. How regularly? Every program. Because we talk about the various elements of Tell Me Your Story. One in particular we've been promoting since September of 2019. And that is that we've encouraged people during the first year was 2020, the year of perfect vision, where we would encourage people to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still small voice. What part of all of this, whether it be the Beautiful Journey VR project or anything else that we do, how important, and this kind of goes to your question of choosing somebody if you wanted to do these alternative forms of self-discovery, how important do you think trusting our intuition or even training ourselves to trust that still small voice, that guidance?
Unbelievably important. The biggest transformation in my life was when I started to really fully trust my intuition. The part of the reason is I worked with probably 5,000 executives, CEOs and executives when I had a national company that an organizational change because I went to the Wharton School in addition to doing psychiatry. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you cannot do in a group or a business meeting is understand what's going on without your intuition, because you can't rationally deduce the interactions between people. It's all intuitive. You have to sense it. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would convince these executives that they needed to develop the emotional and intuitive part of themselves so that they could understand what's going on around them. But well beyond that, this quiet voice that you're talking about is extremely important. However, I just have to say the opposite too. Interestingly enough, that quiet voice, which we thought in therapy and which many of the meditative practices thinks is pure and accurate, has its own distortion because there are many things that go on around us. For example, let me use an organizational thing. The CEO of a company may make certain decisions which cause certain other processes politically to take place. You may be an employee way down in that company and have no idea what's taking place at the other levels, but they're impacting your life. So not everything is available to us intuitively. We both need to look inward and outward. And that's what's wrong with pure Eastern philosophy, as far as I'm concerned. We need both Eastern and the Western.
Yeah. So each individually has a singular focus, and you need to incorporate the two, basically. You need to be able to observe as much. And that goes
understand the world around you and what's going on and how it's impacting you and others, as well as to search inward as to who you are and what you feel and what you want.
That's one of the metaphors, if you will, we use. You are standing on a single point on a circle, and there's an event taking place in the center of the circle. And what we ask people to do by listening to multiple programs of Tell Me Your Story, or anything else for that matter, or books that you read, what have you, is start moving along the points of that circle on the outer edge and continue to observe what's going on. I remember when I was taking photography class in college, I came across an accident in the middle of an intersection in my neighborhood. And I had my camera with me, and I started snapping pictures. Now, I was only able to get around maybe 1/4 turn of that particular circle. But that's what really hammered that perspective home to me, because the analogy that most people say when investigating something like this is, you will talk to 10 different people and you will get 10
different stories.
Exactly. Then you start putting those parts together into a more cohesive understanding of a broader perspective. And it's one of the things we don't do. We talked earlier about social media and so forth. When an event happens, whether it be a plane crash, whether it be a hurricane, whatever it is, we first of all, we as human beings, we want to know right now. Okay, what's going on? What's going on? Right now, right now. And of course, it's just happened. Nobody knows exactly what happened or all the details, but we sure want to know. But then we start to run the guessing game of, oh, well, probably what happened was this, that, or the other thing. And then when it's all said and done, maybe days or weeks later, after all the study has been, all the investigation has been done, turns out that's not what happened at all. Okay, we saw what happened. All right, we have the video, but that's not what happened. And, I find that if we could, which we won't, as human beings, is our nature, right? If we could get rid of that knee-jerk reaction and wait a little while. I know you've probably experienced this living here in Santa Barbara, that when we have those wildfires, the moment someone sees the smoke, they make phone calls to try to find out what's going on. Well, they are probably the first or second or third person who's seen the smoke. And the authorities are just now heading out to the location where that smoke is. So there is no information to give other than there's smoke on the horizon. That must mean that there must be a fire. I've come down the hill this past week, I think 3 times. And 3 times as I'm looking west towards Goleta, as I come down the 154, I see this streaky brown smoke in the air, but there's nothing coming up connecting it to the ground, which means that whatever was burning isn't anymore, but the smoke is still in the air. It's just kind of resting there. Still skies, no breeze. The first thing that goes through my mind is, because I've seen this so many times already, is that must have been a controlled burn. Somebody had a pile of stuff and they set it on fire. The fire department was there to make sure that it didn't spread. And that was done early in the morning. And that's only because of the experiences that I've had here. But a newbie is probably going to freak out, calling 911 and saying, what's going on? What's going on? How does the beautiful journey help us maybe to transition from that knee-jerk reaction to I need to wait a little while before if we're going to pass judgment, okay, or come to a conclusion. Does the beautiful journey help us in that regard to control our own, shall we say, programmed urges to do that, to come to a quick conclusion before we really even have any information?
Well, what you say is a really important uh, thing about life, right? Um, if quick judgments, for example, one of the most interesting things about couples is how sometimes they'll quickly conclude that the other person motives and then react to those motives, and away goes a big, huge fight and so forth, and has nothing to do with what's going on. So
Right.
you put your finger on a very, very important phenomenon. I'm sorry to say, Richard, the beautiful journey is not all things to all people.
Sure.
I don't know if it would help with that. But it's extremely important, and I think the things that help with that are the Eastern philosophy, things like meditation and finding some quiet place in yourself, so you're not quite as reactive. Giving yourself a little time to kind of evaluate what's going on, but not just react to it. And and so I don't.
And I know there's the question out there about the cost for a session. You say it's 20 minutes, roughly 20 minutes.
This is not a session. This is not a treatment.
No, I understand.
This is an art museum that it's in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a piece of art.
Okay, so you can go in there and have this wonderful experience and see. And by the way, I have a lot of the stills that our listeners, our viewers on YouTube are watching of the experience itself, and it's fascinating. And I'm looking forward to getting out there. I mean, it's not like it's not on my way home before I go up to 154. So
yeah, it's very close.
And what about the hours?
That I think it's either 9 or 10 to 5.
Okay.
And on Fridays, I think it's free.
I'll have to check into that. And yeah, very cool.
And I don't think they charge very much for the admission to it. It's
I mean, even if you're just enthralled by the artwork, even if you're just enthralled by what you're seeing, the visions and so forth, the colors, as well as the sound, that mixture. And I love the fact that you've incorporated, as you said before, you've incorporated the science into the art as well. How about before we wrap this up? What about that in terms of our museums and so forth, and the creation of the various types of arts? I mean, we have a program called Arts and Antiques with Elizabeth Stewart, and she talks to folks from all different corners of the art world, and it encompasses a lot of different of area. And science. I know a lot of people have a hard time with science, and science is considered to be an art form too, in that what we know today is not what we're going to know tomorrow. I mean, we are pretty darn certain that, number one, we're not the center of the universe, i.e. the Earth, and number two, that the Earth is not flat.
So you've now come beyond the 15th century.
A little. I think I'm close to the 60s.
Well, can I talk a little bit about some other project which has to do with art? And
yes.
I've gotten very interested in our team. Our team is a wonderful group of people. The guy who used to head up the symphony here, and a guy who does the film and media at Channel Island, and Oriana, who's a major singer in town, and my wife, who's the voice of Beautiful Journey. Anyway, we're going to have a major, major art show in the fall, in October, down at the Community Art Gallery on Garden Street, of AI art. That is, people are going to submit art that they've done with AI. They're going to give us a record of what they put in the prompts, and we have a theme that we want to talk about the positives and negatives of AI now and in the future, and what it's going to do to art and to the world. And that's what their paintings will be about. So it'll be early October, I think October 2nd down there. And I'm just very, very excited to see what will emerge and what the artists around Santa Barbara County will submit.
I think that's fascinating. Did you see the 60 Minutes piece on that, the subject of AI and art?
No.
There was a
Was it
sculptor.
this weekend?
No, this was a couple of weeks, several weeks ago, maybe a month or
Oh,
two ago.
I'll have to
A
look it
sculptor.
up.
Yeah, it was a sculptor. He does his own
Oh yeah, I
sculpting
saw
too.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then uh, he's also having AI create sculpting.
yeah.
Well, whether it's sculpting, painting, or what have you, or writing a book, the only question that I have when using AI, and maybe this is one of those questions that'll be answered to some degree in October, is who holds the copyright? Did AI
Uh,
create it, or did the individual who put in the prompts create it?
well, let me ask you this: if you see a beautiful painting in a museum, and you go home and you use that as a place to start from in terms of doing your painting as
Mhm.
a painter, who owns the copyright?
Well, I guess I would. But the question
We
is,
always have gone off each other's work.
yeah,
So,
well,
so
see, that's why I've always had a problem in music when I hear the lawsuits. You
I know.
stole that riff, you stole that riff. And it's like, wait a minute, you should be thanking them and praising them for the fact that you had an influence in their creative process,
Maybe
not
Bach should
suing them.
sue everybody, right?
Yeah,
Bach was the one who figured out all the scales.
yeah, who owns the scales? I mean, I'm sorry, you used the C note. That's mine. I mean, where are we going to go with this? This is crazy.
This all has to do with the amazing threat that AI is posing to the arts
Yeah.
and to the world in general, and the massive amount of change that's going to unfold. And anytime there's major change, of course, everybody gets scared and upset and legitimately, but doesn't stop it. As I
No,
say, only a fool resists the inevitable.
this is true. I mean, think about the invention of the automobile,
Exactly.
what it did to the horse and buggy industry,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just fascinating. Peter Brill is my guest, and we are talking about, of course, a Beautiful Journey VR project. And beautifuljourneyvr.com is the website, and you are listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan here with Peter Brill, founder of the Brill Family Foundation, as well as the Beautiful Journey VR project. And Peter, I want to thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here to try to change the world for the better for everyone. And I know that everybody has their own definition of what is better. But that's the whole point is that, that there should be a certain, I think, my observation is, there should be a certain level of equanimity in our society. And that everybody actually does have all of the same opportunities. It's whether they choose to exercise them in spite of what they have been told, what they've been taught, and what they've been programmed to believe. I mean, I was born legally blind, but look at me today. Here I am doing what I'm doing, and I've had a lens implant and having a great time living in the most expensive city in the country. And I've been here for almost 19 years, and it's been a blast. So thank you so much for being a part of my journey.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, and you're a very wise and quite thoughtful man, and it's a pleasure to spend time with you.
Well, thank you very much. I do have three final questions that I ask all of my guests. You're going to love this. But before I get to those, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. That's 9 different programs. And we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com with podcasts at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and we're also on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will subscribe for the purposes of clicking notifications so that when I post a new conversation, you will know about it. We also want to remind you that Choices, 5 Steps for Life, my book, is available on Amazon, and it is in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle, with Audible soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we would be gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And with those 2 last items mentioned, there are links on the homepage of richarddugan.com to Amazon and to PayPal. We also ask, as mentioned earlier in the program, that you take time during the decade of perfect vision to spend that quality time in that quiet, peaceful, still place that no one else but you can get to, and listen to that still small voice. With all that being said, we go to our final three questions for our very special guest here on the program and ask first, who is Peter Brill?
I'm at this age, I'm different, of course, than when I was young. So at this age, I'm just giving back.
What gets you up in the morning?
The joy of all the world and the joy of loving.
And finally, what was your best day?
Oh boy. I was flying back in Alaska. I was on a float plane and I was trapped beneath the cloud level with mountains on either side in a valley. And I had to go up 11 valleys to turn right to get to the sea, to get to the Cook Inlet on this float plane, because I couldn't go above the mountains because of the clouds and I couldn't get that high anyway. And I had to choose the right valley. If I chose the wrong valley, I would have died because I wouldn't have been able to turn the plane around. And I counted the valleys. I went down the valley, turned left, and I was out at the Cook Inlet by the sea. I went down to 50 feet above the ocean, which you could do on a float plane, turned on country and Western music, and had the best moment of my life.
How wonderful. How wonderful. What a great experience. Well, Peter, this was a great experience as well. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Richard. Take care.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, thank you for being in my life, and I hope you're happy as I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me into your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.